Welcome to another series in our virtual career speaker series. Today, we're so fortunate to have with us Mac Barth, and Mac is a principal research scientist at Battelle. So those of you who are science focused and STEM focused, you'll want to stay and pay attention to this one. And Mac, we're grateful for you for being here with us today. And our first question really is to you for just how did you get started in your career? And could you tell us a little bit about the role that you have now?
Sure. So I'll go back to day one where everything kind of began. So after graduating high school, I went to university at the School of Mines and Technology in South Dakota, and I started my career path, or I started my education as a pre-med student and studied for 2 years as pre-med, taking all the science classes, math, and everything needed for that. And when I took organic chemistry, I had a professor that was very passionate about what he did and very good at teaching. And he actually got me excited about chemistry. So that's when I made a change in my bachelor's degree to pursue a chemistry degree. And throughout my time at the School of Mines, I got very involved in research, and I actually did undergraduate research under that same professor that got me excited about chemistry. And we did organic chemistry, and we synthesized polymers that were used by the Navy for a basically an electric rail gun that they used on the ships. So they're very unique polymers, different kinds of plastics that you guys would not encounter on an everyday basis, but very unique for this type of application for the Navy. So that was very interesting stuff I did in undergraduate and just got me more excited about doing chemistry in my life. After graduating at the School of Mines in South Dakota, I moved to the University of Pittsburgh and pursued a graduate degree in chemistry. While at the University of Pittsburgh, I got really involved in teaching chemistry. That was something I was very passionate about as well. It's very rewarding to be able to pass that information on to students and see the light bulbs click in their heads as they're learning stuff that's not very easy to understand sometimes, as some people say. So after finishing at the University of Pittsburgh, I decided I wanted to move back closer to home and where the sun shines a little bit more than Pittsburgh. So I found myself in Colorado, and I applied to a job down in Pueblo as a researcher for Battelle. And I started as a wet chemist, which is like bench work type chemistry, kind of repetitive, but very useful for the plant that I'm working at. So I work for Battelle, but we're contracted through the Pueblo Chemical Depot down here in Pueblo, where we are neutralizing the stockpiled mustard gas munitions that they started stockpiling in the 1950s. There's over 760,000 munitions in this chemical depot that are filled with mustard gas, and we are neutralizing that mustard gas and destroying it to basically follow a treaty, the international treaty, where all countries have gotten on board saying that they're going to dismantle all their chemical weapons and destroy them so we have a better future outlook and we're not using chemical weapons anymore. So it's very important work. It's very fulfilling, knowing that I'm helping to get rid of something that could potentially cause environmental concerns or could get in the wrong hands of someone that would want to use chemical weapons in warfare. Okay. As of now, I am a principal research scientist and a method development chemist. So my main role as a method development chemist is to help optimize our methods and make sure things are running more efficiently on site. And that is a very fulfilling job for me because I get to solve puzzles every day. And every day is different for me, so there's always new things that are happening, and there's always a different puzzle to solve. So it keeps me going, and it keeps me very excited to be at work every day.
Wow. So I had no idea that we were doing this work in Pueblo and that you were doing this work in Pueblo. Uh, so Battelle, who were they hired by? A lab company? And I know this is part of the peace treaty, but is it also in partnership with the government as well?
It is a partnership with the government. Everything's run through the Department of Defense, the DoD. So funding comes from there. Bechtel is the primary contractor on site, and they have paid Battelle to run all the laboratory operations.
Oh, wow.
So the most important thing we do in our laboratory is we are doing air monitoring. So we are monitoring the air in the plant and on the perimeter of the plant because we want to ensure the safety of everyone involved as well as the community that surrounds the plant. So we are doing 24/7 air monitoring to make sure that workers are not being exposed to any mustard gas. And we're also monitoring the perimeter of the plant to make sure there's never any mustard that leaves the plant and could potentially, get into the community outside of the plant. So
Wow.
it's a very important job to make sure that everyone is safe as we go through this process, which is, not the safest process since we're dealing with chemical weapons that are also attached to explosive missiles. So there's a lot of working parts, and we
Wait, are they still attached to the missile?
So it's what it is, it's just looks like a normal missile that you might imagine, and inside that missile is a reservoir that holds the mustard gas, which is actually a liquid at room temperature.
Yeah.
And there's a explosive device at the bottom of the missile, just like any other missile. So when that would go off, it would blow up and the mustard gas would be released. And as we know, mustard gas and chemical weapons have not really been used since World War I, minus a few countries that have unfortunately used them. But most of the international community is on board to destroy these weapons because it's not a fair way to go about war, is what we decided. And it also has a very big environmental impact if they were to stay where they're at and not be neutralized.
Wow. Wow. And then I want to go back to organic chemistry because I can't tell you how many people might say, I wanted to be a doctor or, and then they say, but then I got to organic chemistry and I was out. But for you, you dove in harder. You loved it and you seemed to have a knack for it. Was that something you were expecting? Have you always had an eye for science even since high school?
I have, definitely. I always wanted a chemistry kit for Christmas growing up as a little kid. I never got one. I think my mom was scared what I'd end up doing with it. I always
Oh, and little did
enjoyed.
she know you would eventually end up saving the world, contributing to world peace.
I still give her a hard time about that sometimes, but that's all right. I got to play with chemistry sets when I got older, so. I always was fascinated by science. To be honest, I always liked fireworks as a kid, which is very heavily chemistry related. I like the idea of being able to transform matter into something different, and that's what a chemist can ultimately do. If you have a good understanding of chemistry and the fundamental building blocks of it, you can take a piece of matter and transform it into something else. I mean, that's how we have plastics today in society that we use quite a bit. That comes from oil. So if you look at oil, that looks nothing like the plastic water bottle you may be drinking out of right now. So being able to manipulate matter and transform it is a very interesting thing to me. And the old alchemists used to, try to change gold or change silver or anything else into gold or lead because they thought they could transform anything. That so much doesn't work, but they're still working on that to this day, to be honest.
Oh, I bet, because of the value, right? So then you would have
absolutely.
Wow. So and this is fascinating. My daughter was Marie Curie for
I
Christmas.
hate to,
Can you hear me?
oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah,
what did I say for
it
Christmas?
blanked out for just a second. So
Oh, my daughter was Marie Curie for Halloween last year, and when people say, "Do you want to be a scientist?" she says, "No, I want to be a chemist." And she's very
really
particular about really wanting to be a chemist. So I hope she follows through on that. And I'll have to tell her about the work you're doing because I think she'd be very fascinated by the fact that she could. She wanted to discover elements and things. And I said, I mean, are there more? I don't even know. But so we've been talking through some of that. But so she would be fascinated by your work as well. And it's
interesting.
interesting to think about putting it into real life terms about how we use science every day and how
Yes.
you're using science in this global capacity where you're such a difference maker, which is outstanding. And I think that it's happening right here in Pueblo is amazing. How did you decide on University of Pittsburgh? How did you choose where to go to school?
Well, so I grew up in South Dakota, and that's where I did my undergrad, was the South Dakota School of Mines up there.
Yeah.
And so after that, I felt it was time for me to branch out and see something different. So I picked something very far from home, actually, and that was in Pittsburgh, um, which was an amazing experience. It really was an eye-opening experience to kind of get out in the world on your own and do things for yourself without, being further away from family. Definitely was a growing experience, and I learned a lot of things. And at the end of it, though, I realized I wanted to be a little bit closer to family, and that's why I moved back this way to the Midwest and decided on Colorado. Wasn't quite ready to move back to the cold winters of South Dakota, so
Sure.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy with Pueblo as the weather is great down here because I like seasons, but the snow doesn't last too long, and we get a lot of sun here. And that's
Right.
one thing, Pittsburgh, the sun doesn't shine quite as much there. It's kind of cloudy and gloomy a lot of the days, so it
Yeah. But you have the
made me
Steelers.
miss the sun.
Yeah, they have the Steelers, so that's good. They get
Oh
they
yeah, it's a
yeah.
great town for sports. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the people were super friendly in Pittsburgh. It's a really nice town and has neighborhood feel to it. Even though it's a big city, it's got smaller little neighborhoods in it. So it's
I
a really cool
yeah.
place.
I'm a big believer in the harsher the weather climate, the nicer the people are. Because when someone moves
Yeah,
into a neighborhood or a community, they're like, "Welcome! It's gonna be fine. You're gonna love it. It'll be 50 below for a few months, but don't worry, you're gonna love it."
right.
They have to be nicer, right? They have to be. Did you have
Absolutely.
yeah, along the way in your career journey, people who supported you, who were mentors for you? And can you tell us a little bit about, the people in your life who made a difference and helped you build your career?
Yeah, I mean, I would say undergrad, the professor I had that really got me interested in chemistry, he was a wonderful mentor throughout all my undergrad and really got me geared to where I am today. He got me involved in his research group on site where we developed those polymers. He 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 was hard on me and made me who I am today. We would do practice presentations together where we'd present some of the research we were doing in his lab, and he would give criticism when needed, and he honestly made me the type of researcher I am today through what he offered. So, and he helped me get into the University of Pittsburgh, helped me with my reference letters and everything, and was definitely a good mentor to have to start my career in chemistry. So
Yeah. And in organic chemistry, I still can't get over that because you're the first person who I've heard talk about
yeah,
it. Like it was great. Everyone else is like, "Oh, then I got there." Um,
yeah, that's and when I taught chemistry at the University of Pittsburgh, organic chemistry does weed a lot of people out. Some people don't like it. For me, it's a very fascinating field, I think, because it
oh,
really is the manipulation of matter. So
Yeah, and it does sound so fascinating. And then how did you, in your role, or sounds like you have been elevated some, you've been promoted some, you've given additional opportunity. What is it about you as a colleague, as a staff member, who that can really get advanced? So in the field of science, it seems like it'd be very, very matter of fact. But are there traits that you need to bring to the role that help show I'm a leader here, or I'm capable of leadership? What are some of those things that you brought and that you look for when you're hiring others as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, you need the book smarts, but it's not all about book smarts in reality. Like being personable and relatable to people has really helped me move through my career. I have moved up at Battelle. This is my fifth position in Battelle in 3 years, and I've moved up every year throughout the way to a new role that requires more responsibility and stuff like that. And I would say, the book smarts, being able to understand the fundamental chemistry is very important, but you also need to apply that to the people that you surround yourself with. So communication is a very important thing. And I see that, some people struggle more with it than others. And it's something that's foundational to really making a successful career. If you can't communicate well with people, you're going to have a hard time being personable with them, and then being relatable, which they're going to in turn see you as a someone that can lead a group or finish a project and stuff like that. So I would say, communication, being personable, those are two very important traits, I would say, in a career, regardless of science or not. I would say, though, in the science field, you tend to find more people that are introverted and tend to stay away from those types of interpersonal skills, communication, and they're more interested in just the data and the research, which is wonderful because we need all sorts of type of people in the workplace. But I think if you're interested in developing leadership skills and moving into a lab or a science position where you want to move forward and maybe manage someday or be in charge of people, you really need to nail down some of those communication and interpersonal skills, because that's what's going to set you set you different from the other people you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's something I practice on a daily basis. I'm always trying to improve my communication. Emails are something that we do day to day with everyone on site. And if you don't take the time to make sure your email is effective, concise, and communicates what you need, then you're not going to see the results you want. And I see that quite a bit, is that people send 2-sentence emails out and they think the reader's going to understand what they're saying. Most people aren't going to understand what they're saying, because it made sense in their head doesn't mean it makes sense in everyone's head. So really effective communication, especially in the science field, is very important. We use communication all the time to relay new ideas, improve ideas. There's scientific journal articles that are very important, and those are the type of communication there. We try to keep it very concise and to the point, but we also need to make sure that we are getting our point across as well. And I really think communication is a very important thing in all fields, and especially in science, which some people wouldn't really think about.
And how emails can be misunderstood so easily. So it's this type of
Yes,
communication, and text too. So when you write, and if you're texting or if you're writing someone an email, yeah, you're right. In your mind, you know exactly what you're saying, and it sounds great. And then somebody gets it on the other end and says, I mean, how rude, right? And then
absolutely.
And they come
Absolutely. Yeah.
come back to you and you're going, what do you mean rude? I told you exactly what's going on. Or I always think about comma usage. The real very popular one is commas save lives. Let's eat,
Yeah.
grandma. Let's eat, comma, grandma, and let's eat, grandma. So if you keep the comma in there, commas save lives, because communication is so tricky. And I can imagine that it is, especially among a bunch who are very focused on the data, head down and very driven. And that can be one of those learning
Yeah.
opportunities. Are there times in your life and in your career where you have had an opportunity to look back and say, "Oh, I probably would have done that differently in the future"? Anything stand out to you?
Oh, um, I mean, I would say that thought probably happens almost every day, to be honest, because in reality there are multiple pathways to get to the same place, right? So you can choose any kind of pathway to get to where you're at. And did you choose the right pathway? Maybe it got you where you needed to be. Was it the most efficient pathway though? And that's kind of something you learn every day as you grow older, as you become an adult, you become more aware of things. And I would say honestly, almost every day I realize there's something I could have done differently and probably had the same result, but maybe it would have been easier on me or I would have spent less time on it. And that's just something that I don't think will ever end because we're always getting better as we get older. We become more wiser and we have more experiences that help us able to learn quicker and process information more quickly than we were as kids, So specifically, I can't think yet because I don't know if it's happened today. But honestly, I do reflect many times at the end of the day on things I accomplished and was I the most efficient I could have been, or was there something else I could have done to save time or energy? So
I love how you said that. It's really a trick question, I think, because in many ways, if you say you would do something different, it means you wouldn't be where you are right now, perhaps. So I love how you say there are multiple pathways to get to the same place, right? Yeah, that's insightful. And then just figuring out which
and
choices you make.
and that comes into absolutely, and I mean that comes into the work I do every day and that scientists do every day because we can accomplish the same thing multiple different ways. If you're thinking of a chemical reaction, you could produce, let's say you're trying to make ethanol, okay? There are probably over 10 different ways I can think of making ethanol in my head right now. Um, but there is one way that's going to be the most efficient way, the most cost-effective way, and the most time way. So, people have been producing ethanol since the beginning of time. And we've developed all sorts of different ways to make ethanol now. We actually can use microbes to make ethanol for us, synthesize microbes, not just yeast and stuff like that. So we've perfected it. But as I'm saying, there's all these different ways to get to the same end product. And what really is going to be your most effective, less time consuming, and cost effective way, especially when you're looking at from a business aspect. Cost is very important. So
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing to think about. And are there things that you would advise a sophomore or junior in high school right now? Are there things that you would advise them to stay focused on right now to help them in the long run, especially if they're interested in science?
absolutely. I mean, I think there, you're interested in science. Obviously, your science classes are very important, right? But there's also other things that are very important to be successful later in life, and that's really just getting involved in your school and being more present. Extracurricular activities, they give you a foundation to communicate, make friends, and network with people, right? So the schoolwork is very important, as I'm saying. If you want to get into science, pre-med, doctor, whatever you want to do, your grades are important, but also being able to network with other people and practice your interpersonal skills and develop relationships. All of that stuff is very important, and will just help you succeed later in your life, whatever career path you want to take.
Agreed. I agree with that too. And I love how you talk about interpersonal skills and relationship building, and following those mentors and being able to understand when you're seeing a mentor at work and when you should kind of jump on, because when someone offers you an opportunity, they might say, hey, I think you'd be great at this. And if it's something that you're truly interested in, saying yes to some of those opportunities will certainly help to take you further too, and give you that opportunity, like your professor in Pittsburgh, who helped launch your career on the whole. When you're hiring someone, tell us a little bit about how somebody can stand out in an interview for you. What is something that they could do or show you that might say, I'm the right candidate for this role?
Well, I would say one thing that's very important during an interview, and it comes across pretty easily for the interviewees to pick up on, is honesty. A lot of people like to elaborate or, share, maybe they're elaborating their story a little bit, or they're even making some stuff up. And that comes across very if you're interviewing someone. So being honest is actually the most, I think, crucial thing while you're doing an interview, because what you're doing is you're showing the person your true self. And if you are the right candidate for the job, then you will get that job, and they'll be able to see that because they can tell you're being honest with them, and you're expressing who you actually are. And it really goes a long ways in interviews. And it's very easy to get nervous and elaborate on questions or pull things that may not be fully true, but in reality, if you're being honest through your whole interview, you are more comfortable, which is very also important, because when you're really nervous, people pick up on that a lot. So if you're more comfortable and you're being yourself and you're just having a conversation really with the people that are interviewing you, it will be a more fluid conversation, and they'll really pick up on a lot of your traits and personalities that they could see fit for that job.
Yeah, that is great advice, to be honest, especially. And Mac, have you had anything in your career that has surprised you, or has been a real challenge for you that you had to navigate through? We can't prepare for everything, but if there have been any challenges for you that you could relate to students and say, well, here's something that happened to me, and here's how I managed through it.
Yeah, I would say that not every time people will see eye to eye with you, right? And you may actually be very passionate about what you think is right, and this has happened more than once with me in my career. And we basically, example is, we were developing a method for the air monitoring of mustard gas using a GC mass spec chromatographer. Okay, and that's just an instrument used to pick up on the mustard gas signal in a very layman's term, not getting too involved in the science there. And so this instrument is what we use to measure the concentration of mustard gas. And there's a lot of different operating parameters that are used to control that instrument and allow us to detect mustard. So it kind of brings up that pathway thing. We have lots of different ways to be able to see mustard. What parameters are going to give us the most effective results and time and save time? Mm-hmm. So one of my managers was very adamant about using specific parameters that would keep the temperatures all the same throughout the run. And the run is what we're calling is our time to acquire the HD signal and quantitate from that. And, you know, what he envisioned, and he works in the office and doesn't really work with the instruments, did not work for what we were trying to do. So I had to, you know, be adamant about what I knew would be best for the lab and produce lots of data to prove to him that we're making the right call. But you're not always going to see eye to eye with your boss or your peers. And sometimes it takes a little bit of convincing to get people on board, especially if you feel that what is right for everyone else. I say stick with that, because honestly, it shows a good judge of character, and it actually has helped me move through the lab into higher positions, showing that I will stand up for what I think is most beneficial for the lab, and not just hunker down and let someone tell me what they think is best. So
that is such a great point, and it's such a tricky piece to navigate. So it's also one thing when your peers at work. So I mean, essentially, students, we're talking about, you're challenging the teacher. You're challenging the teacher in the classroom, and there are times
yeah,
where students might recognize that the question has been written wrong, or the answer is wrong, and you have to be willing to show that to the teacher, and of course the teacher has to be willing to listen
yeah,
to you. But I mean, it can be a tricky situation to navigate, right?
it's very tricky, and you obviously you got to be careful the way you navigate situations, but um, having conversations like that can be very constructive to the overall process. Even though it may be hard to do in the beginning, it's actually a very constructive thing to have open dialogues and discussions and arguments, I would say, for lack of a better word right now, but being civil about our arguments, right? And bringing data or whatever needed to support our claims, and trying to convince someone else that this is the right thing to do. And that's something that you will encounter everyday life. It's not even just in your career. I mean, there are going to be times that you don't see eye to eye with someone, and you might be right, but we're going to need to, have a civil conversation and back up our claims with evidence or support. So
Yeah, that's a great one, I think. Um, are there other tidbits of advice that you would share with students, just really to close out and kind of help them on their journey? But what last remarks would you have for students to say, keep these things in mind as you start to think about your career and your own professional journey?
sure. I mean, I would think right now, today is the day that you are making what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Every day you do right now, especially in high school, is very important. What you do with your grades, what you get involved with extracurricular, the friends you make, all of that stuff is going to end up deciding your ultimate future in the end, because that is who you are right now, and you will take pieces of that with you when you become an adult and enter the career force. So if you really want to join the science field, or if you want to be a doctor, engineer, keep in mind everything that you're doing today is ultimately going to lead to where you're at later in your life. So treat every day as an important part, and do the best you can. Um, Stay up on grades, meet new people, interact with people, and just have fun, because life flies by pretty quick. And take advantage of the time you have right now, and do the best you can, because ultimately it will make you who you are later in life.
I think that is wonderful advice, and it's almost like it's never too early to really start preparing for the rest of your life, right? It's never too early to get started.
Absolutely, it's never too early.
Yeah, and
It's never too early, and keep in mind you may be set on being a doctor right now, but as you change and you learn different things, that might change and morph into something else, and keep your mind open, because as right now, the amount of possibilities you have are endless. So just keep your mind open, explore and learn as much as you can, because the more you learn, the more possibilities you have.
That is beautiful. The more you learn, the more possibilities you have. I think that's a great way to leave it, Mac. I really do. The more you learn, the more
Thank you.
possibilities have. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing a little bit more about your own professional journey to inspire our students here on their journeys as they explore careers and think about what to do with their lives as they think about how to contribute back to society. And your journey in science and knowing where it led you today to be part of this global, worldwide movement really for peace. I mean, that's what you're doing. And do you feel that at work? Do you feel the magnitude of what you're doing every day?
Well, sometimes you get lost in it because days get very busy and you're dealing with the little things, but it's always important, I think, no matter what you're doing, is to keep the big picture in mind. And that is the big picture here, is that we are helping the world out. And I do come back to it quite often because that helps me realize what I'm doing is important, and it makes me feel good every day. So always think about the big picture. It's very easy to get caught up in the little things of life and the problems you got to solve. But as long as you keep the big picture in the back of your mind, that's what keeps you moving. So
Yeah, and that makes the little things worth it. The big picture makes all the little details worth it, I think. Yeah.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mac. We appreciate it. And students, thank you. We encourage you to go to mywayja.org and take a look at building your own career journey at that website. And we hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of your day. And Mac, thanks again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time. So